Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Play, Pause, Rewind, our 68th episode of this show. Sorry we're a little late this week. We had some job-related stuff that had to be taken care of. And also, we're trying out a new recording software, so bear with us as we learn this. Zoom added some really shady shit into their terms of service, so not trusting that. But otherwise, Niles, how have you been since our last episode?
Oh, I've been good, between the busyness and everything of my life, but it's been good. We got to spend some time up in Glenwood Springs recently. We're based here in Colorado, and it's just a lovely time getting up there, and we got to try out one of the springs up there that's more for the locals, Iron Mountain rather than just the big soaking pool, but it was a wonderful time, and then got to see Asteroid City, so that's always fun too. But what about you, Dylan? How have you been since our last episode?
Yeah, doing pretty well. Just keeping busy as well. Playing a lot of video games and seeing a lot of movies, which we'll talk about later. But as Niles alluded to, we are talking about Asteroid City this week. Needed a little bit of a break from going to the movie theater as often as we were, so we went back to a movie that we missed. And Asteroid City is the latest and 11th film from writer-director Wes Anderson, and centers around a play about a group of characters in a small town called Asteroid City in sort of Southwest America, I would say. The film stars Jason Schwartzman, Scarlett Johansson, Tom Hanks, Jeffrey Wright, Bryan Cranston, Edward Norton, Jake Ryan, Maya Hawke, Steve Carell, and many, many more. Niles, what were some of your initial non-spoilery thoughts on Asteroid City?
Very positive on the film overall. It's one of those, I feel like I am a fan of Wes Anderson films. I haven't seen all of them, just put that out there. I've seen Fantastic Mr. Fox, Grand Budapest Hotel, Moonrise Kingdom, but yeah, there's so many more that I need to see and that are on my list. But I just love
Royal Tenenbaums you've seen, haven't you?
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, there's plenty that I still need to see. He's got 11 films out now, and I need to check them all out because I just love his stories are always so weird. They're just out there. They're strange. But they're also sincere and endearing, and I really do appreciate his cinematography and the symmetry. It's kind of become a meme, I feel like, of just shoot everything in a Wes Anderson style, and you know exactly what it's going to look like. It's going to have very pleasing color tones, very symmetrical shots, head-on kind of stuff like that. So I love the way that he does that in these movies, but I think Asteroid City is definitely one that merits a rewatch, and I wish I rewatched it before we started recording today. But only got so many hours in the day. But he's so meticulous, and his films are always so complex. He's always got multiple narrative levels, which makes them difficult to digest, especially this one, I would say. But I think this one really did hit the mark for me of what I expect for Wes Anderson. And, I wasn't as big of a fan of The French Dispatch. I thought that one was a little too disjointed for me, just personally. But I respect it for what it is. But yeah, you can always expect some quippy dialogue, some symmetrical shots, brilliant color schemes, diverse characters, and I feel like Asteroid City delivers on that. But what about you, Dylan? What are your initial thoughts on Asteroid City?
Yep, I had a lot of fun with this. I think it's a really fun movie, really well made, great performances, great characters. I have only seen a handful of Wes Anderson films, but I've liked all of the ones I've seen. I still think Moonrise Kingdom is my favorite of the ones I've seen, but this is a lot of fun too, and I love the aesthetic and the color, and as always, Wes Anderson's camera work is very distinct and fun, and the way his characters talk to each other is very charming.
Yes.
And it's very pleasant to watch, even though a lot of the characters are kind of dealing with some serious shit. That's an element of Wes Anderson movies that I think a lot of the people who parody it, and especially to an even greater degree, the AI quote-unquote art parodying it, doesn't understand, is that they are very emotional and human stories about dealing with human emotions, and this is no exception. And you cannot translate that if you're only looking at the surface level camera work and blocking of a shot. So I do think a lot of those parodies are really fun, but there's so much more to his films than just that. And that can be definitely said of Asteroid City as well. And at this point, it's not a film that I think you can spoil all that much about, but we will transition into spoilers. So if you'd rather just go watch the movie without that, peace. See you later. Come back afterward. But as we kind of said early on, the film follows basically the misadventures of a large group of characters as they are quarantined in this small American town because of an alien sighting. An alien comes down and picks up a little asteroid and takes it away and disappears. And the military quarantines them there. But also, this narrative is actually a play within the world of the story. So we have the sort of base layer, which is Asteroid City. Then above that, we have the fact that all the characters are actually actors playing those characters in a play. And then we have the other added little element of the writer of the play earlier on meeting with the star of the show. And then you have Bryan Cranston. So you want to talk about the multiple narrative levels we got going on a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's just fascinating because, the play, Asteroid City, is the main story, and it takes up the bulk of the movie, but it's, in color. Mm-hmm. And then when you go one step above that, get one step removed in the diegesis here, you got the writer, director, actor level there. That's in black and white, and it's kind of more just the story about them and how the film came to be. It's kind of like a televised behind-the-scenes thing with Bryan Cranston. We have these several different layers there, and it was, classic Wes Anderson trope. I feel like you see that especially in the Grand Budapest Hotel, because that one is like a story within a story within a story, and then it just kind of sucks you in so much, though. Like, you get so invested in that, like, once you get to the end of the movie, it brings you back up. You kind of come back up for air, and you're like, oh my god, that's right. This is how the story began. It's completely removed from the story we're talking about. And this one is not as much that here. This is kind of more just, 2 or 3 stories interspersed together here. But I think the great thing about this, these narrative levels here between Bryan Cranston and the writer and directors and everything, and the actual play itself, it really does break the fourth wall in a lot of ways here, both visually and narratively. You got those great classic Wes Anderson shots. Like, I think there's like a really good establishing one at the start of the movie where it kind of like zooms into the stage, and it pans out as well, and it's kind of breaking the fourth wall in that way. But Bryan Cranston directly narrating like all this behind the scenes stuff is straight up breaking the fourth wall of the play, and it's pulling you out of that too. But I think even more so when you get into the character level of the specific people in the play, that's when it really starts to get meta in a lot of ways. Like Scarlett Johansson's character, for instance, she is actually an act. Like, when you zoom out and look at it full scope, all the different narratives combined, she's actually an actress playing another actress who is preparing for another role. So it's kind of 3 levels of acting there on top of each other. It's just beautiful. And you see that too in Augie's character, or Jason Schwartzman's character, who's our protagonist, the war photographer. There's kind of jumping ahead here. He leaves the stage in the 3rd act when the chaos is ensuing to go talk to the director, because he's like, I don't understand what's going on in this play, and I don't understand how it's going to end and why it ends this way. Why are my actors doing these things? But that kind of just breaks the fourth wall in its own way,
Yeah, and I love the Bryan Cranston's character. Like, just thinking about it, kind of reminded me of, how an opera sometimes before an act starts, there will be someone who comes out and like kind of describes, like, in this act, this is what we're going to see these characters do, and these are the dynamics at play. He kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah, I see that.
And I also love how each section of the Asteroid City like storyline is broken up into what act of the play it is, what scenes we're about to see, and we get those nice little cute title cards.
Yeah.
And I also love when Bryan Cranston accidentally stumbles into the like level of reality that is Asteroid City. Like, he's in color for a second, and he's just like, oh wait,
I
sorry.
supposed to be
And
here?
he just kind of steps
Yeah.
out. Yeah, it was. And I also love the way the space of the town is introduced, and it's framed in a very Wes Anderson way. But the camera kind of centers on one angle, pans 90 degrees to the right. I think you get a sense of that angle, and then it does it again, and it does it again, and it gives you a nice sense of both the geography of the town and how in the middle of nowhere they are, so that as the events of the film keep progressing, like, and things get crazier, it gets funny. But it's just, very nice, simple way. It's like, here's where everything is, because all these characters are going to be inhabiting these different spaces, and it's beneficial to know where they are and relation to each other.
Yeah, like a play. Here's where this is. Here's where it is on the stage, and kind of setting the scene. I love it, and I think that these multiple levels of narrative. There's a lot of ways that I think you can interpret it and try and dissect. Why is it a play inside of a televised behind the scenes interpretation of the screenwriter's experience and all this stuff? It's like, what's going on here? Why is this the story? And I think it's my own interpretation that we have these multiple levels of narrative here to force the audience, us, the actual audience, to question performances and perspectives, and to kind of reflect on what characters are and what they should be. I think that there's a lot of different ways. Like, there's like some actors that you just can't envision anybody else in that role. But a play, like a script, anyone can step into the role of Hamlet. Anyone can pick that up and give us a unique perspective on it. But it's like, who's going to do the role justice, and what is justice for the role? That's kind of one of the things that I pulled out of this film. And I also feel like the multiple levels of diegesis, fancy word for narrative, is it speaks to the power of escapism and how allowing the mind to wander and go from one narrative to the next and just embrace something that's completely brand new to it. It gives you a chance to grow and to grieve and to change. And I think definitely I'm going to be rewatching this film at least 2 more times, so that way I fully understand it.
Yeah, I almost feel ill-prepared to talk about it right now, having just seen it once, because there's just so much going on in it. But let's talk about the character development a little bit. You have a note here that you feel that this is kind of one of the weaker elements of a lot of Anderson films. But I feel like we get a decent amount of good stuff with Augie, especially. Just like at the beginning of the movie, trying to figure out what his life would be like without his wife, because she recently died. And he goes from like not even being able to tell his kids for, what was it, like three weeks?
3 weeks, yeah. It was a long time.
And to sort of forming this new, like, through his dynamic with Midge and sort of budding relationship, it seems like with that, it's sort of him finding his a new direction for his life, and like he's moving forward and he's living in what's around him rather than just kind of coasting through.
Yeah, he is kind of this stone-faced character. Yeah, he is struggling with his wife's death, and I feel like he has turned a corner by the end of the film, and it is because of these conversations he's having with Midge. But I think Midge. Also the appearance of the alien, I think, just shatters the world for everybody, and it's like everyone's just trying to grapple with this life-changing thing that they just couldn't control. And to the character development, I mean, I think my interpretation there of like character development is more based on like the French Dispatch, because when you look at Grand Budapest or Moonrise Kingdom, those are just superb for the character development of our protagonists. But like French Dispatch for me was just kind of a miss in my opinion, and I feel like there just wasn't much there. But yeah, Augie and his family, they get great micro moments of development. I just wish it could have been more even for every character, but not every character can be the main one.
Yeah. Yeah, and I thought another interesting like element of Augie's character was like he just snaps a picture of Midge and her daughter at the diner, like very unsubtly and without permission, and then she's like kind of like, what the hell? You don't ask permission? He's like, I never ask permission. It's like, that's kind of unacceptable. You should always ask someone permission before taking their photo. But then he's like, oh, I'm a war photographer. I'm normally like shooting battlefields, so I don't really get the opportunity. It's like, okay, that's kind of funny. That's a good bit there.
There's some layers.
And then we have and then we have Midge and her bruises, which I thought was very interesting because it's like, it's makeup, but she always like has something to say about them, and I think she switches the cheek they're on at one point. And then she also mentions that someone might eventually find her dead in the tub surrounded by pills. And then we get a shot of her like that. But actually, she's just practicing for a part. So what was your takeaway from some of that? That was very interesting.
Yeah, I really enjoyed those scenes where they were reading the lines to each other and practicing because, again, going back to the narrative, it's actors trying to think through it like as these characters in this play, and then you also add in one extra layer. It's Jason Schwartzman and Scarlett Johansson acting in this way. It just compounds and compounds. So it's a challenge to see them kind of pull it off. But yeah, the bruises on her face were an interesting detail because I think it is her attempt as that actress, as Midge, to connect more with the character that she's trying to play, which I don't think she ever named, but it's very loose, where we don't have a lot of clear, I guess, what's the word? Parameters.
We don't know what it's about. Like, what is she playing?
It's not clear who the character is or what the story is that she's like getting into, but she's like doing her best to try and embody this character and enjoy it. Or not enjoy it, but like, bring some truth and honesty to it.
Like, learn it, like live it. Yeah.
Yes. Embrace it in every regard that she can. And I mean, the bruises are interesting, but it feels like method acting in some degree,
Yeah. And I think also she's trying to sort of visualize and physicalize the trauma she feels, because I forget the exact line, but she kind of says like, yeah, people have hurt me, not physically, but like more on the inside. And maybe she's trying to express that and sort of linger in it in the same way that Augie is lingering in his trauma of losing his wife. And maybe that's her way of sort of being stuck in the past that she has to get out of as well.
Well, yeah, I think that there's that whole sequence of the guy who comes onto the train with the letters trying to persuade the actress to be in the play. And he's got different letters for different,
for different
moods that she's in. And so it's clear that she has this kind of history with the screenwriter, or I can't remember if the letters came from the screenwriter or the director, but it feels like she's kind of running away from something as that actress. Like, she doesn't want to participate with whoever is in her life. She's trying to get away, but then she gets kind of pulled back in because of this character, because she wants to contribute and contribute to some art. But yeah, I think she's got her own repressed emotions that she's grappling with here and trying to connect with through this character, the same way that Augie's actor is too.
Yeah, and I loved everything with the teenagers who are competing in like this high tech like science fair for a big check.
Yeah.
And I love the like one of the sets of parents is criticizing another one. It's like, your kid's invention could have killed us all, and they're talking about the jetpack. It's like, your son made a laser rifle. Like, that could have hurt us all. I was like, well, of course, it's a weapon. Of course it could have hurt us. I just love that type of humor. And then you have it, like, there's so much of it that's just so matter of fact that it becomes funny. And like the couple is like, wait, we don't want to sleep in a tent. Why are you putting us in a tent? It's like, well, unfortunately, this cabin burned down and we haven't been able to replace it yet. So you have to sleep in a tent. And then it's just like a tent the whole rest of the movie.
Oh. He's so quick with the jokes in this movie. Yeah, it's like it's just one after the other. And,
and I love the split screen shot where Jason Schwartzman and Tom Hanks are looking eye to eye while they're on the phone with each other. I forget they're just staring at each other silently,
and they're
but
just
not looking
so
at each
quiet.
other.
It's like a staring contest for a bit. Like who's going to say the next word?
Yeah. Right. And I really loved Margot Robbie's cameo too. I'd heard about it a while back when the movie first came out, and I'm glad I forgot it because it was a really nice surprise. And I just love the idea of two actors mid-show in different plays on the street, just like taking a break and then sort of talking about their work and their life just to sort of process what they're doing on stage together. And also the element that it's like, there was going to be a scene in the play with her in it, but they had to cut the scene for whatever reason, but they're still using her photo as the like wife who had died or whatever. And they're like, yeah, isn't that weird? How that like we would have worked together, but we're not. Now I'm in this role over here, and that's just how it goes sometimes.
Yeah, it's like sometimes
it was cool. I liked it.
But yeah, I thought I really liked their exchange there too. Her cameo comes at a great time in the play. You know, in the third act, it's when Augie storms off stage because he needs to talk to the director. He needs some space. He's like, I don't understand what's going on in this play. Why is my character acting this way? What's the point of it all? And he's struggling to just work through it. Like, and I think there's this is where it kind of gets a little bit meta too, with the different narrative levels because. We learned that the screenwriter of the play after this break that he actually died 6 weeks into the production of the play, and I'm assuming that they were romantic together because of their scenes together, like the behind the scenes. So I feel like that the actor in this situation, he's kind of dealing with that grief of that loss. You know, he just had this budding romance with the screenwriter, and so he's probably just trying to balance that.
Wait, the screenwriter was Edward Norton.
Yeah.
Who are you talking about?
Yes.
Who had the romance with? Oh, yeah, you're right. Because they kissed. I forgot about that.
I know. Yeah, it's
my
so
God.
quick, but
Oh my God. Yeah, I totally forgot about that whole element. You're right. Yeah, he's dealing with the loss of his partner, I guess.
Yeah.
Shit.
Like maybe it was just a quick affair. Maybe it was just like a whole actual budding romance. But like, I think him as an actor, he's dealing with this real world grief, and his character is dealing with this grief of losing his wife. And so it's just like a very appropriate cameo for Margot Robbie to be there and to have this exchange because it's like, oh, I have this connection with you in the play, but in real life,
right? And
I don't know you at all. You know.
Right, like you were supposed to represent someone who my character lost in a similar way that I just lost someone in the real world, and that's like profound and powerful in this strange, random way.
But yeah, I didn't know that she was going to be.
That's really cool. I totally forgot about that. on a lighter note, I think it's very funny how Steve Carell's character just materializes into a scene or is always in the background waiting to be called upon for whatever any character in the vicinity of his little hotel needs. And also hilarious that he's selling little tiny plots of land that are the size of half a tennis court. It just seems like it's like a real estate scam almost, and then suddenly the land might become super valuable because of the event with the alien. It's just such a goofy little thing. And Steve Carell's character he doesn't like do anything in the story at any point. He is just existing there and pops in to every scene he's in. It's so funny.
He's committed to his job, and I love it. But yeah, it's like, I bought the land, but now the alien's gone and the military's gone and the hype is gone, so it's worthless again.
Yeah. And yeah, let's talk about the alien a little bit because I think that ties into some of the theme here as well. But first off, I love the goofy design and the practical suit. Yes. It feels very low budget, like B-movie alien from, post 50s or whatever. Also, the alien is Jeff Goldblum, which I didn't even recognize him in the one scene where you see his face. I just saw his name in the credits as Alien, and I was like, oh my God, Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, right? We heard him say like one line, and it's perfect. But yeah, this alien is... it's fascinating because the alien doesn't do anything. It does. It takes the meteor, it takes the asteroid, leaves, and then it comes back
very awkwardly, takes it,
and it just gives it back. It's just kind of like an agent of. It's kind of an agent of chaos because it upends the world with this very significant event, even though it really didn't do anything, and it just causes significant panic.
Right, and that's what I kind of thought too, because like I got the vibe that it was just kind of doing its own thing. It had some business with the asteroid it needed to take care of, so it grabs it and then it brings it back when it's done. But just due to the era the film takes place in too, it kind of seemed like maybe a little bit of a comment on Cold War paranoia, because it's just minding its own thing, minding its own business, doing its own thing, but it causes this massive like military quarantine response thing, like orders from the president. Everybody starts freaking out. And I also think it runs parallel to the themes of confronting grief, like severe grief, because just like existing one day and then finding out aliens exist the next day, like dramatically and fundamentally alters your relationship to the universe. And now you just have to exist in this new reality. And I think in a similar way to how a lot of the characters are learning to not necessarily fight their grief, but sort of live with it and move on from it. A lot of the characters have to do the same thing with the knowledge of aliens. They have to just kind of be like, well, yeah, this changes a lot, but there's still 9 planets in the universe or in the solar system. So, like, we can talk about that. We can still talk about Jupiter.
Yeah, like we can speculate all we want about this alien, but we're never going to get anywhere with it. But I see what you mean about the Cold War paranoia there a little bit, because it is once the atomic bombs are introduced to the world. We got Oppenheimer on the mind right now too, but once that's introduced, it's like that threat is always going to be there now. Like the world is
and there are atom bombs in the background of this movie several times. Another atom bomb test. So it's definitely touching on that, because you're right, like that fundamentally alters the world and our understanding of our place in it. So yeah, good call out there.
But I love the alien design too, and I love how we get that like one Jeff Goldblum line in there too, where like Augie's like walking past him, and he's like, "What's the point? Well, like, what's the point of the alien?" And he's like, "I don't know. We're still figuring it out," or like, "It's not clearly defined." Kind of deal. And it's like, wow, there's a lot of ways you can interpret that. Like, you're either just like it's not clear in the script isn't finished, or like the story isn't finished, or just you just don't get to know what the aliens deal is. It's just there to cause
it's just there because it's there. Like, it had a thing it needed to do, and that's like, sometimes there isn't a greater meaning. It's like people just got to do shit, and that's the shit they have to do. But you also have the grief of the director of the play. Adrian Brody's character is like living behind the set because I guess he got divorced or his relationship ended or something, so he's dealing with that grief too. So we have so much grief on so many different layers throughout the story. But you ask a question in our notes. Yes. What is the point of it all?
What is the point of it all? What's the point of this movie? It's difficult to pin down. They tell us directly in the movie, or the screenwriter does, Edward Norton's character, about not halfway, maybe more in the third act, like the start of the third act. He's hosting like this behind the scenes kind of sit down with a bunch of like people just asking him questions about it, and they're like, "What's
all the actors? It's like the cast of the play."
Yes, thank you. And they're like, what does it mean? What's the purpose of it? And he's like, what? He's like, infinity, maybe, and I don't know what else. And so he mentioned that a secondary title for it, I believe, was The Cosmic Wilderness for Asteroid City. And so I thought that was interesting, because I feel like a lot of these characters in the play, they are grappling with these feelings of isolation and emotional repression because they're quarantined.
Yeah.
You got characters like Augie and Midge, who I feel like have this, especially Augie more so than Midge, but they are really kind of repressing their emotions. Like, they don't know how to deal with it. He took 3 weeks to tell his kids that his wife died. Like, if that's not emotional repression, I don't know what is. So I feel like
it's incredibly unhealthy.
Yes. So it's like these characters, they're really just grappling with these feelings while also having to like focus on this life-changing event, which is this alien coming to Earth and visiting Earth and completely changing everyone's concept of extraterrestrial life. Are we alone in the universe? And you even got people like Maya Hawke's character, who's talking about the planets, like we were just talking about. Like all the kids just want to talk about the aliens, and she's like, "Yeah, there's an alien, but there's still 9 planets, but she doesn't know how to deal with it."
I have a lesson plan. We have to do the lesson.
We got to get through it. So it's like they're kind of juggling their feelings, their isolation, with also this infinite mystery of the cosmos too. It's it is tough to answer, but I mean, on the play level, I feel like they make it clear that it's about those themes of isolation and emotional repression. But what do you think? What do you think, Dylan?
Yeah, I think grief is a big part of it. Obviously, we've talked about it already earlier in the episode, but I also think, just going off of what we were just talking about as well, just grief and new information and even life-changing events, like they're going to happen to everybody. But I think what the movie is trying to say is like you can't just stop what you're doing because of any of those. You have to like absorb this new nature of your reality and continue with your life. You have to continue living and you have to continue growing. You can't just be completely sidetracked by this change.
Yes.
You have to sort of deflect and absorb, I guess.
Yeah.
just you bring it into you, and you are now a person who has this knowledge or has experienced this trauma, and you have to move forward with that, I think, is part of what it's about.
I agree. I think you got it pretty right there on the grief angle. And I mean, when you look at the additional narrative levels there, I feel like there's more meaning to pull out. That's why I'm going to rewatch it, because I feel like there's more to it. But there is that line in there, especially at the end, where they're doing the sleep exercise with all the actors, and it's just like, you need to fall asleep on command, and they all do, But then the actor who plays Augie, Jason Schwartzman's character, he says, you can't wake up if you don't fall asleep. And it just kind of becomes this thing, this echo chamber where everyone's saying it. You can't wake up if you don't fall asleep. You can't wake up if you don't fall asleep.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of meaning in that statement. I think it kind of bounces off of the grief angle there too, because to me, that statement feels like an acknowledgement that you can only really process grief and loss and get through things if you let yourself experience it and live it. Like you can't snap back to reality and regain control over your life if you don't allow yourself to lapse a little bit. If you don't give yourself a break, you can't wake up if you don't just accept what you can't control and make peace with the unknown. And I think that is kind of what the grief is. I think that's what the alien is too. Like the alien's not a clear representation of grief, but it's like when the alien comes to Earth, it changes your life, and it's something that you can't control. And you don't understand the cosmos. You don't understand where the alien came from, but you gotta just roll with the punches. And the only way that you can get back to living life normally is if you just accept what you can't control.
Yep. Cool. Well, overall, Asteroid City, I would say, is a very fun time. If you like Wes Anderson, I'm sure you will like this, although some people don't like this as much as his other ones, but I liked it a lot. I definitely recommend it. But yeah, what about you?
Oh, yeah,
overall,
me too.
Final thoughts?
I would definitely recommend this movie. And yeah, it's not going to be something like like Moonrise Kingdom or Fantastic Mr. Fox, where you're going to walk away completely understanding it the first time. Like, I feel like, like you said, Dylan, I wish that maybe we rewatched it so that we would have had more time to prepare for this episode. Because I feel like there's stuff that we're missing, but that's okay. It's
that is a symptom of us both having full-time jobs in addition to doing this.
That stuff gets in the way when you got to earn money. But it's I love Wes Anderson. I think this is one of his better films. But again, still got to watch so many, like the Royal Tenenbaums. I think Darjeeling. That one, I can't remember the full title, but I got to watch that one too.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's transition to the last segment of our show here. Just other stuff we have been watching, reading, playing, engaging with, or whatever. And I will go first this week because we both saw something together, and maybe we do a little mini review at the end.
Yeah,
so,
good idea.
So I was continuing with my adventures with Superman. Incredibly cozy, nice cartoon Superman show. I like it a lot. There are some people who seem to have a new complaint about it every week, and their complaints are very silly and unserious. I don't really understand them. It's dumb. But good show. I would recommend watching it. I also went to go see Passages, which is a movie about sort of a couple, two men, and their relationship becomes incredibly complicated when one of them starts having an affair with a woman and sort of wants to have the best of both worlds and keep both of his relationships intact. And it's really good. It's a very interesting relationship drama. There is a lot of sex, too. So just be prepared for that. But it's a very compelling movie and very well made. I liked it a lot as well. I also read volume 1 of a comic book called The Undiscovered Country. And the premise of that is basically 30 years prior to the start of the story, the entire United States walls itself off and goes dark. And no one's heard anything out of the country ever since. And there's like a pandemic raging in the rest of the world. And then all of a sudden, they get a message from within the United States inviting a team in and saying there's a cure for the virus they're fighting. And then they go in, and it's like Mad Max World in America. And it's this like small team of characters having to navigate. And it seems like they'll be like moving from a zone of America to zone in each volume. And just like dealing with different baddies and problems in each different area. It seems really fun.
I like that.
I'm also reading. Yeah, it's cool. I'd check it out. Also reading a novella called Breach of Peace, which I believe is the debut book by book YouTuber Daniel Green. It's sort of about a murder mystery with these sort of like religious adjacent cops investigating in this empire. It's cool. I like it. It's a short little novella. I'm about halfway through. And then also the big thing I've been doing the last couple weeks is Baldur's Gate 3 came out, and I have played so much of it. It is an amazing game.
High praise.
I've played it for like 20 hours, and I'm still in Act 1. It is, I think, as close as you could get to replicating the feeling of playing D&D within the confines of a video game. Because, like, at the end of the day, you know, a computer game is just a program, right? Like, there are only so many inputs and reactions it can make to you. You can't ever really have any choice you want in a computer game, but Baldur's Gate 3 gets pretty close. Yeah. Like, you can do a whole lot. But yeah, would you like to introduce the thing that we saw together?
Yes. Last night we went out to the movies, braved the theaters, the theater crowds, and saw The Last Voyage of the Demeter.
Yes,
which is
We'll stay spoiler free for this.
We'll stay as spoiler free as we can, because if you've read Dracula, and I hope you have, there's a chunk of the book where it is just the captain's log from the Demeter ship, where it's transporting Dracula from Romania to London, and that's what the whole movie is just based on. It's just those captain's logs, because that's all we have from that time.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
I really enjoyed the movie. I don't know about you.
I liked it a lot too. I think it's a really neat little like monster kind of creature feature thing. It's very well made. It stars Liam Cunningham from Game of Thrones is in it. He's the captain. There are several other people in it as well, whose names I didn't think to look up before this, but sorry. But it's like it's very well crafted, very spooky atmosphere, well shot. Dracula is kind of terrifying in it, and you know, it's it's just I love the element that it's like he has to get across this stretch of water that's like this long and he's on it for this time. So he's just like kind of rationing the people on the boat, going after them at a pace that is acceptable for how much food he needs for this time. It's so good.
It's fun. Yeah. It's like one of those, it's just like one of those scary movies where, the people get killed off one by one, but it's far more interesting than any of those ones have been like made in the 90s,
But yeah, it is nice that the movie doesn't fall into like the typical slasher horror movie tropes where like the characters just make super stupid decisions to put them in isolating positions where they can get picked off by a monster. It's like they react in ways that are very believable for like who they are and the knowledge they have of the world,
yes.
right? It's like initially they're like, what's happening to these people? Why are they disappearing or dying, or why do they look like they've been bit? And then it's only as the voyage goes on and they are confronted with more and more irrefutable evidence that there is like a thing on board killing them, then they start to accept and cope with that reality.
Yeah.
But it's good. I would recommend watching it.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's just a shame that it came out in the middle of summer rather than like Halloween season or
Halloween.
Some other time when people are looking for scary movies. I feel like people are gonna overlook it because they're like, oh, I just saw Barbie or Oppenheimer, and I don't feel like
and Oppenheimer, but... Right, or they're going to rewatch Barbie or Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of kind of botched releases in terms of timing this year, like Dungeons and Dragons, Mission Impossible, and now this. Like all of them are kind of like failing at the box office due to poor release timing, I think.
What's going on?
Yeah. But I think the shorter episode this week, but I think that's going to do it for us this go around. I think our next episode is Blue Beetle.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so that movie's also going to bomb, it looks like, which, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. We'll see. Soon, we'll talk about it next episode.
Yes.
But, and before we leave, the strikes for SAG-AFTRA and WGA continue. It looks like Marvel VFX workers are voting to unionize as well, which is pretty incredible news. So we'll keep an eye on all that, keep you guys updated. Niles, where can people find you on the internets over the next couple weeks?
On Instagram at Niles Got No Styles. What about you, Dylan? Where can people follow you on the intertubes?
You can find me on Twitter at D-Day Movies, on Instagram at DylanD1026, on YouTube at D-Day Movies, and I actually have a new video out there as of last week talking about how Secret Invasion could have solved one of Marvel's big current problems they have. It didn't do that, but I talk about a hypothetical where it could have. You can also find me on Twitch at D-Day_movies sometimes. And you can find both of us on Play Pause Rewind on YouTube and audio platforms of your choice, as well as our second channel, Play Pause Rewind Videos, where we post non-spoiler sections of our episodes, as well as Rewind, which is another series we do, and other shorter videos there. But until the next episode, thank you all so much for watching. Like, share, subscribe, do all the things, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.